So please be mindful of what you say and how we treat others. Everyone is muted. However, if you have a question, simply unmute yourself and ask the presenter during the presentation, or write it in the chat, and myself and Julia, my coworker, can ask the question. We will also have time at the end of the session to answer questions. We will have a questionnaire at the end of the session that we ask that you take a few minutes to complete. This just helps us know how we're doing and provides us with suggestions for future presentations. I've also provided in this PowerPoint the links to our program guide, and we will also put that in the chat box, and then how to request a training in your area. We'll put that in the chat box as well. Okay, I think we are ready to get started, so I'm going to go ahead and allow Victoria to introduce herself.
Hamitakiapi, chante washte nabe chuzapi, wasichu ia Victoria, imakiapie. Hi everybody, my name is Victoria. Wachi Himaza Wiyang. Iron Plume Woman is my name. I am mother, artist, all these things listed here. I'm also a 500-hour yoga instructor, booty yoga instructor, yoga of 12-step recovery leader, life coach, communication facilitator for Indigenous youth. I hold a degree in business management. I'm also an active wellness community member. Currently, I'm working towards my bachelor's degree. I have been in work, especially more specifically youth work is my work experience for almost a decade now, specifically working with Indigenous youth from different backgrounds in education, culture, life skills, and then also working with young adults and elders here in the communities in Minnesota or Minnesota. I do teach all around the nation, which has been an honor as well as a privilege, teaching Indigenous people to live healthier lives by learning to self-heal through mind-body connection.
Thank you, Victoria.
So I'm going to go ahead and share a screen of the presentation. It is a shorter PowerPoint. It is shorter with the hopes that we have those who would like to share their medicine story with us. And so here we have our medicine stories, and it is based off of the podcast we just launched yesterday. The actual recording will be posted by this weekend. So again, my name is Victoria, Indigenous Lotus. These are social media handles. You can find any info at indigenouslotus.com and at indigenouslotus@gmail.com. So the learning objectives today is basically we're going to talk about what Indigenous Lotus is, the work we do, our mission, how we're carrying that out, the podcast, Healing Through Storytelling, and then what is medicine? Teaching and mentoring is a form of medicine, and then integration into the classroom. So these I brought more specifically into this PowerPoint with the hopes that maybe this inspires, maybe this will help with different techniques or different ways that you as an educator or you can help with staff who are in the classroom bring some of these practices to the students there. So Indigenous Lotus is a for-profit, 100% owned and operated by myself with a team of Indigenous women from other nations. Marissa Baumgartner, she is from the Umatilla, Walla Walla, and the Cayuse people. Liz Strong, she is of the Red Lake Nation. Angelina Zerna, Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe. And Kayla Richards, who is Oglala. The mission is to motivate Indigenous people to live healthier lives by learning to self-heal through mind-body connection. So it's not just about movement, it's about connection. Our work, so we have a variety of things that we're doing and also new projects that are coming up, getting a lot more detailed and offering more opportunities within these areas. Life and wellness coaching. Right now, this specifically, we focus on helping with changing or improving habits and getting rid of bad or poor habits. We will begin our first workshop in August for that. Motivational speaking, movement classes. We do different forms of meditation, which I've done here, which has been really great. Yoga of 12-step recovery. I have a contract with the Indian Health Board here in Minneapolis, and we do addiction recovery work and also integrate that with yoga. Sculpting, a sculpt practice, booty yoga, or a booty practice, yoga and restorative movements as well. Clothing and apparel, so we have that. We have a new launch coming in August as well. We also have our annual Indigenous Mind Body Retreat. That is also coming in August. That is the 21st and 22nd. And this year we're focusing on supporting men in our healing. And so we have huge participation with that. And then we'll go into the podcast, our medicine stories, and what that is, what inspired this to be, how this came to be, and what that's going to look like moving forward. So our medicine stories provide space for guests to share stories and forms of medicine practiced by elders, youth, and those throughout our communities, offering wellness, tips, self-care practices, and DIYs that could be integrated into your own life and journey. And we decided to go with our medicine stories because storytelling is a form of how we carry on our traditions, oral speaking. And here it's filled with lessons, imagination, and it's just healing in itself. And so what is medicine? Medicine isn't necessarily the pill you take, but what you do, the way you think, and what you put into your body. Different forms of medicine. And I'm going to kind of list off some of the actual benefits of how it affects the body. So common traditional and adopted practices, beading and sewing. So beading and sewing itself helps with coordination, strength, math solving skills. And then we have drumming and singing. Drumming itself is actually physically healing. It boosts the immune system and it helps in assisting and releasing that emotional trauma. If you've ever used a drum, depending on which tribe you come from or what nation you're from, some women do utilize the drum, or if you ever hear the drum, when you hear it or you feel it, for some people that's really emotional. So there'd be times where you find yourself choking up and wanting to cry and not even really knowing why. So that itself is really healing and really helps release a lot of what you might be holding on to inside. And so for running and dancing, this is actually one of my favorites. I'm not a huge dancer, or not a huge runner, but I love dancing. My daughter, my 1.5-year-old daughter and I, we dance all over this kitchen, the dining room, anywhere we have space. I've actually been teaching her how to fancy dance. And I myself have been learning jingle dress dancing so that I can teach her and the youth I work with different forms of dancing. And so it boosts levels of protein, the BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is heavily associated with the brain's cognitive and learning functions. It regulates the circadian rhythm. So if you're familiar with the circadian rhythm, that's our internal clock. And women on menstrual cycles, we actually follow a different type of clock than the circadian rhythm. It lowers the rate of brain shrinkage and cognitive decline. And these are also shown to have huge effects or great benefits for elders too. So who stay physically active. So teaching, mentoring is medicine. So here I really wanted to highlight this aspect, not just because of the work that you are all doing, but this is a background that I come from as well. So here, children themselves, they carry past traumas of their parents, ancestors, and since sometimes there are just parents who are unable to provide appropriate teachings, and sometimes it's up to another adult to pass those healing teachings on. And so that's where that term comes from. It takes a community to raise a child, or a tribe to raise a child. And as teachers and mentors or aunts and uncles, this is a part of our tradition. It's not just a job. And I think when we look at it that way versus, something that we have to go do, it then changes the entire way that we think when we're talking with these youth. It's a part of our contribution in the community to our own people, to step in and also to share our stories. And I know for my son and I, when I travel, when we're doing long road trips, and I'm sure some of you can really relate to this. So if you're with young ones, or even just with your siblings or cousins, and you're going for a car ride, or you spend a lot of time just kind of with somebody else, my son would always ask, Mom, you remember that story you told us about when you lived here? You want to tell it again? And so that, to me, for my son who's 16, I love that. That it was like, I've told you this story like 5 times, and yeah, but tell it again. Or I lost my my grandma, my kunshi, and her and I were very close. We would always take trips to Siston to go to the casino, or just to go and visit, and she would always have a new story out of her almost 90 years of being here on this earth. She had so many stories. And you take what comes up, right? Like you take from that story, however you fit that into your own narrative, or whatever your imagination plays out. And so it's important to not only tell stories, but listen to them. And so if you ever listen to a child's story, how playful they are, or how innocent it is. And sometimes it gets so far off into, like, I had a youth that I worked with tell me about the old grandfather turtle, and he was autistic, but he always had like the best stories. We used to call him the old storyteller man, is what we referred to him as. But he would tell me the story of the turtle, the old turtle who sat on the rock, and he would come up with a different story for this turtle every time. But nonetheless, listening to those stories and where they come from, and how that plays into a part of their lives. And so when we're working with youth or children, young adults even, bringing into some of those practices, those traditional practices, teaching through rhythm. And this is, you can use the drum. The drum itself, and a part of our teachings, regardless of our where we come from and our beliefs with the drum, there are still different ways to utilize that drum beat, right? Versus like the hand drum or the big drum. There are different ways that we can bring that in and let the child experience that, what that feels like, what that sounds like. This is something I've actually brought into my children's yoga class, a few of my classes, where I let the students drum to the beat of their heart, how they could feel it. I would let them drum. Also, doing things like reading while, stagnant, bicycling, walking, sitting, having a conversation, book club, things like that. Those are really, it's really engaging, and it builds that greater strength with the youth and adult. So disciplinary. So there are many different ways of discipline. I remember one time I was so frustrated with one of the youth I worked with, and this was early on. This was very early on. I was maybe 20. I think I was 21. I had just started my youth work, and I had a young woman who I didn't know. I told her that, hey, the center's closed, and she can come back tomorrow. And she said, FUB. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if this is like the kind of work that I'm capable of doing, and I really had to, it took me a little bit to kind of take that in and understand what that was. Like, where did that come from? This girl didn't know me, and I didn't know her, but she was coming from a place of hurt too. Maybe at that night, it just wasn't safe for her to go home. And so a lot of times what I would do after having certain conversations or listening to you speak, I began just talking. How come you did that? What happened? And having those conversations. Because a lot of times, and I know many of you know this or have experienced this, but a lot of times it's just, what is going on at home with this child? What do they have to go home to? And so that conversation and letting them speak. So many times children are being spoke to or spoke at, and there's not that engagement. And so listening to them, letting them become the individual themselves and have their own thoughts and their own opinions, and speaking up when they feel they need to. One of my biggest things, changing what is wrong with this student to what has this student been through. So changing that narrative, the way that we think. I just had a conversation this morning with a friend of mine, and she was saying that how her aunt works as a teacher, and she was like, yeah, she was telling me about, all these bad kids that she works with, and I was like, kids aren't bad. It's like one of my big things is children are not bad. And I think when we switch that is like, why is this child acting out? What is going on? And really trying to understand what hurt place that they're coming from at that time. And how can we teach them? What can we do? And so a couple things that to add in is creating a physical space for youth. And this looks like, for example, in like some of my yoga classes, I might position myself closer to the door. Because a lot of times, if you look at where people sit when they come from a survival background, coming from that survival background, a lot of people will tend to sit closer to the back of the room where they could see the door. And so explaining or just understanding, I think just that basic understanding of why does this youth or why does the student sit back there in the group, sit back there in the classroom, and knowing that it can come from a survival place, right? Being ready to flee, getting ready to run, making sure that they can see everything. They can see behind them. They know the wall is there. They can see their peers or their classmates beside them. And so understanding that, maybe if you have that ability to control what that space looks like, setting it up so that it's comfortable. And sometimes even within my classes, if I'm teaching a really trauma-informed restorative class, I always say that it's okay if you feel like anything comes up, it's okay to leave, or take a break. Increasing natural light, the really bright lights that we use. And I know I'm going into a little bit more detail, but it plays a huge part into it. But the really bright white lights are really damaging to our eyes and our circadian rhythm. So creating more of a natural light, dimmer light. And then positive priming. And these are mental breaks or brain breaks, which if you're familiar with Barbara Fredrickson. She talks a lot and a lot more in depth about positive priming. And so that's taking a break. Even if your class or your session or your group is only an hour, if you're working with youth, there's so much stuff going on in their minds, and that instant gratification and that antsiness. Taking a break and then doing the work for yourself, for your own wellness, and continuing to do that work. So stories teach us about life, about ourselves, and about others. Storytelling is a unique way for an individual to develop an understanding, respect, and appreciation for not only their own culture, but for others. So before I move forward, does anybody have any questions? Or, I mean, really, I'd like to hear what type of medicine stories people have, or what type of medicine that they use.
Hi, this is Carol Cadu Blackwood. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, what I like to do, part of my medicine, my daily regimen is I like to take hibiscus tea and put in a splash of elderberry. I drink that every day, and I do notice a difference. I do feel better, and I'm off if I don't have it.
Thank you, Carol.
While people are thinking, Victoria, I did want to go back to your quote about medicine. Is that something, your quote? Because I'd like to use that.
Which one is that?
It was talking about medicine is not actually a pill. Okay, yep.
Yeah, I wrote that.
Okay. So may I have permission to use that? And I will acknowledge you with it.
You may.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. My name's Emilia Simeonov. I'm here in Anchorage, Alaska, and what you do is what I do here. My family, we drum on a big drum, and with my work, I work with behavior health at Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium. So I am the culture bearer, and I teach different craft groups, different youth groups all over Alaska how to bead with our traditional furs and stuff like that. So thank you for sharing. And everything is medicine. Everything traditional that we do is medicine. And I'm so happy I joined, and thank you for hosting this and presenting this. I really love it.
Thank you, Emilia.
And then a couple people posted in the chat. Catherine, I'm glad to see you that you're here. Catherine Palmer said that she smiles and always uses my eyes and lips in a smile. And I will agree, putting a smile on your face absolutely helps.
Thank you.
Oh, and then Martina George said, I've just recently started sharing my 23andMe with students to show that we are all related.
Thank you. So if we have no more medicine stories to share, I would like to quickly go back to the podcast piece. So this is we just recorded our first episode. And so now what we'll do is we'll bring on guests bi-weekly, interview them, and talk about what form of work that they do or practices that they utilize as medicine, and how they do it, and what type of tips that they can offer. And so this is hosted by Marissa, and she will be interviewing and introducing a lot of these guests, and she is our guest host for this summer. So with this, we will not only have voices of our youth, but of our adults and especially our elders. Like I mentioned, I'm an active community member, wellness community member here, meaning that I go into the community and I speak or work with the Indigenous population, especially in the Little Earth community where I'm from, which is an urban community here. And I've worked with and I have taught yoga to some really great elders there. And a lot of men actually joined that group. And so what really inspired this was hearing these stories. When I decided to quit my job, my secure job, my safety net, and decide, hey, I'm going to just start this business. When I first started out, I was teaching so many yoga classes and for free that I would have all these amazing conversations with kids about what they like to do, or elders, what they wish they were doing more of, and that they were taking that they were being active in their wellness journey, in their healing journey. Maybe they, had taken some time and they were kind of in a stuck place and coming out of it, but being active in changing their lives and improving it. And so we were able to have all these different conversations. And a lot of times in my yoga classes, it turned into about 30 minutes after our 1 hour of yoga session that we were all just talking. And it happens in the majority of all my classes because it's so beautiful that people come to this space where they feel vulnerable and they speak. And it takes a lot for people to do that. And hearing so many different stories over time, I thought, how can I put these people on some kind of platform so everybody can hear this? Not everybody is going to hear that elder who lives in the second floor in the apartment building in Little Earth on the small side at the end unit and talk about their journey and how they are still here, or the child who is living in an emergency shelter, trying to sleep in a bed that is not theirs, how they're overcoming or how they're dealing with it. What do they do to find that way to be and that way to heal? What tools that they're utilizing to survive? And I think the more we have these conversations, the more we amplify our voices, because we already have voices. They were never silenced. We have them. It's just amplifying them and putting space, having a platform, and putting these people out there so that they can share, so that somebody can hear them. Somebody from Washington can hear and listen to somebody from New York. Somebody who's not on social media, who's not mainstream, and be able to capture this and record it and be a part of something really beautiful and really life-changing. And so this is the purpose of this podcast. And for me, I want to share one of my medicine stories is forgiveness is medicine. And I actually have really created a type of practice specifically for myself to forgive myself for things that I have done or for things that have happened to me, as well as forgiving others. Because I can't forget it. It's there. It will always be there in some way. But forgiveness at this moment for me and for the past 6 years, that has been my medicine. And that comes in so many different forms. Forgiveness allows me to grieve properly, allows me to set boundaries, allows me to love myself and to accept myself for who I am. Forgiveness also allows me to apologize when I'm not correct, to allow for my son to actively speak up and call me out when I need to be, if I'm in the wrong. And so forgiveness is not only medicine, but has changed my entire life. And so that is the chapter I'm at with this form of medicine, is forgiveness. And so I want to go ahead, and I do want to thank everybody for sharing their story. And I hope you all tune in and listen. Again, this podcast will be posted. Our first episode will be posted this Sunday with myself and our host, Marissa. And we will be talking about what is medicine. These podcasts are really short, so you can tune in maybe on the drive to work or while cooking or what have you. You can tune in and just listen in and save those if you'd like. You can access the first episodes via the indigenouslotus.com/podcast page. And so I want to talk about our event that we do have coming up. This is our annual Indigenous Mind-Body Retreat. Here we are focusing on supporting men in healing. This is at Mystic Lake. That's Prior Lake, Minnesota. We have our keynote speakers, Damon Bellholter. He is from Alaska. And I believe one of you had spoke is from Anchorage. And so maybe you're familiar with some of his work. But he does specifically work with men and young boys. And he will be here speaking and also holding a workshop. We have Miko Sampson. He is a hoop dancer, him and his brother, and he teaches hoop fitness, which is healing health and healthy healing hoop. I'm going to get that mixed up. But then we have Donnell Barlow, if anyone is familiar with her. She is an author. She's also a yoga instructor, and she does a lot of wellness cooking. And then Waylon Pahana and Johanna Herrera will be coming in. Aubrey Marie from Duluth, Minnesota, Julie and Sheena. So we have different things that we have to offer at this retreat, and the catering will be done by Yazi the chef, who is amazing if anybody follows him on Instagram. So I want to thank you all. Miigwech, Padamia, any info you can find at indigenouslotus.com.
Yeah, we had one more share in the chat. Judith said, I'm not Native, but Hungarian. I came across Native medicine 8 years ago and made a documentary, Won the Message, because as I see it, for healing the current vibe of the planet, people of all colors need to come together and learn to be one. I am hoping that with this film, I can open more people's eyes to connect with each other and with Mother Earth. And Judith said, thank you for sharing your stories and letting me share mine. Thanks for sharing that, Judith.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually looking for it. Okay, I see it. I am going to look at that. Thank you for sharing that, Judith.
Oh, thank you very much. It's just you made me cry and I didn't want to be on camera crying.
Oh,
So, thank you.
yeah, thank you. And so were there any other questions or comments?
Victoria, did you want to tell them what you're going to be working on with us shortly?
Oh, yes, we will be Oh, I was just reading. Oh, yes. So what we will be doing is we're going to have a weekly series for movement. And these are live sessions. They will be recorded. They're about 30 minutes. And so you can utilize them whenever you're comfortable. Teresa will have that information out along with a post for that. And anybody can join: school teachers, administrators, students. And what I'll create is just kind of an outline of what we'll be doing. But a lot of it, we're going to start off an introductory movement and just more so mobility and strengthening, and then getting into flexibility. Flexibility doesn't look like doing the splits. I can tell you I cannot do the splits. For as much teaching as I do, I cannot do them. So everything that we'll do is really attainable. We will also be connecting the mind body with the breath, and how to control that in different breathing practices that we can utilize at different times of the day. And then, did we have a date for that, Teresa? Was that the 12th? Correct?
Julia might have the correct answer. I know that we set it on Tuesdays, I believe. We're just waiting on the start date, but it will be in July. Is that correct, Julia?
Yes, that will be coming shortly, and we're super excited to have Victoria kind of on board with us with K through 12 as we're heading toward the school year. Feels rapidly.
Yeah. And it's really for anyone. And it's just a way of coming on for 30 minutes to just kind of start your day in healing using Victoria's practices. So, and we will make sure that we record each one of hers, and then we'll put it in a package in case she wants to review one later.
And so a lot of the practices that we will be doing will be something that you can do with those you work with, family members, anything like that. They'll be a lot slower, and you'll get a lot of information on exactly what you're doing, so you understand what type of movements you're doing and why you're doing it.
Someone asked if they will be on YouTube, and they will be on our website and YouTube. And we're actually also, in addition, going to put it all in one package as well. So you could just go one after the other. The YouTube channel is Native Center for Behavioral Health. And I think, Julia, did you already put the link up there?
Yep, and I can repost it. But we have our own little playlist, so all of our content just kind of funnels right in there, and you can watch them back. And I think it should go all the way back to last summer, so all of our content is there. Oh, okay, great, Kayla. I'm glad you found it.
So Victoria, we still have some time. What would you like to do? Would you like to do a lesson for us?
You know, we can do a little bit of grounding and rooting meditation. And with this, before we do get started, it'll just be a few minutes in length. But before we get started, think about what you consider is your form of medicine right now, at this moment. What is something that you're utilizing more so than anything else? And then with that, how do you see yourself sharing that with somebody else, with a coworker, with a relative, with your peers, or anybody that you work with, your students, the youth, and think about how that might benefit them as well. And then think about the type of story you would like to hear, or go out and seek a story to hear. Ask somebody, ask a person, ask a student, ask a kid. That right there is one of the best conversations you can have, is asking somebody else to speak about storytelling. And so with that, I do want to go ahead with our meditation with that in mind, thinking about your medicine as well as the conversation you can have with another, and then how you can share your medicine. So let's go ahead and sit up tall in our chairs. If your feet were crossed, go ahead and connect them to the floor. Kind of rock in our seats, getting a little bit comfortable in our sit bones. Head just kind of side to side, just slowly moving. Feeling the muscles move in the neck. And then sitting up tall. We're going to take the shoulders, bring them up towards the ears, and then lower them down. Hands are going to rest above our lap, palms face up. And when you're ready, and if you feel comfortable, you may go ahead and close your eyes. And with your eyes closed, turn your focus up towards the center brow, into your mind's eye. Feeling the earth beneath your feet, from heel to toes. Reaching beyond the shoes that we're wearing, the floor beneath us. Extend your roots deep into the earth. With every breath, they grow deeper. They grow wider. And sitting up tall, lengthening the upper body, we reach our crown towards the sky. Feeling the breath as you inhale through the nose and exhale. If anything distracts you, just bring your focus back to your breath. Feeling and visualizing the breath as you inhale and exhale. Now let's go ahead and inhale, breathing into our heart. And exhale, releasing anything we don't need. And as we exhale, we make space and room to continue to grow, making space for others. Now let's bring to mind our form of medicine. What came up during this conversation? Maybe what comes up now. And as you think about it, visualize it and see it in front of you. And as you see it in front of you, visualize the brightness around it growing, filled with light, love, healing. And as you see it in front of you, next begin to visualize how you use it. Whether it's that tea you drink, visualizing yourself sipping from it, whether you run or walk, if that is your form of medicine and you visualize yourself as you're pacing, visualizing a space that you love to be at, whether that's beading, cooking, visualize yourself in that space. Or whether it's teaching and being in that classroom. See yourself there. And as you see yourself there, you inhale and the bright light just glows around you and in this space. And gently placing a soft smile on your face. Moving forward. Let's go forward today, tomorrow, at least by the end of the week. Take time to listen to somebody else's story before you share yours. Carry your story within your heart and know that it is always there for you to share, change, evolve, whatever imagination has for you with your story, whatever healing comes. But take time to also listen to others. Let's go ahead and take our hands, placing them above our hearts. Feeling our heartbeat. Visualizing us sitting in a circle with one another, side by side. Feeling our heartbeat the same as another. The heartbeat of our circle and our space. Not only feeling the beating, but seeing the vibration. As we see ourselves as that community, as that tribe. And being there for others as much as ourselves. Hands can come to prayer if you'd like. Thumbs to center brow. But again, I want to thank you, Padami Amigwich. And you may open your eyes. So I want to thank you everybody for being here, for taking time out of your day to listen to this presentation. I look forward to seeing some of you again. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out via social media. And via the website also has information as well, and you can stay up to date on what we have coming up. So thank you, everybody.
We have a lot of chats now in the comment section, or a lot of comments in the chat section.
Yeah, I was trying to read those. Thank you, everybody. Oh, that's great, Catherine. Yeah, Marissa is amazing.
Victoria, every time I do this, I want to cry. And I'm assuming that's happy tears because I'm happy. But for some reason I want to cry, tears start rolling. Maybe it's just the release of the negative energy.
Yeah, it's release for sure. I have a friend who we were talking about medicine stories, and she was like, I don't know why, but I really like crying. If there's ever a moment, I'm gonna cry. I like it. I like the feeling, and I love how I feel after. So I didn't think about that until she shared that with me the other week, and I thought that was really beautiful because I shared about drumming and feeling that choked up feeling, or when you go to a powwow and you see people dancing or you hear people singing and you get that emotional like need to release. And I think that's so important too. If you don't feel comfortable at that time letting it go, making space for that, making time for that within that day before you go to bed to let that go.
Any other questions for Victoria? I think we may end early today unless we have some other questions or comments or anything. Anybody want to share any stories?
Can I share?
Sure.
From university, I got to spend a week in Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in 2007 as a leadership program. And since then, I just wanted to help, but I didn't know how. And that's how this whole film started, that I kept asking questions, always asking questions, asking stories, asking the elders. And I was focusing on the Lakota people, but then how my life turned out, other people came into my life from different tribes, Cherokee, Mohawk, Lenape. And I ended up I'm like, okay, here is a chance, an opportunity to learn from all these native people that unfortunately people today don't have that connection with each other and with Mother Earth and with the divine. And that's why I started to just gather information and filming everybody, taking interviews. And then when COVID happened last year, I was like, Thanksgiving, sitting home by myself, no relatives because everybody's elders in my family here. I'm from Hungary. And I was like, okay, I had enough of this whole thing. And I sat down and I started to edit, to put the film together. And I know it's not perfect, but by New Year's Eve, I was like, I'm done, 6 weeks editing, and I have to put it out there. And I want people, I submitted to like 50 film festivals, and I just want people to see it, not for me to get noticed or anything, but for people to see and learn. Because this information, I think, is such a gem, such knowledge that everybody should know. And I'm so grateful for my Hungarian and American friends and neighbors who support me. And many of them or my classmates say that, well, I didn't know. I learned a lot from what you shared. And I think that education is so powerful because a lot of people have no idea what's going on. And I just thought I'd share this. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Judith.
Thank you.
And I think Carolyn, has a question as well. She's got her hand raised. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, my name is Carolyn DeFord. I am Puyallup, Nisqually, and Cowlitz. I currently reside in Nisqually Territory in Washington State. And I just wanted to share a little bit about what I've learned about story and storytelling. But one of my elders told me that sometimes a story just wants to be told or needs to be told, and we don't know why we told it or where it came from or why am I telling you this, you know? And what she had said was sometimes the story just comes forward and needs to be told, and you don't know the reason today or tomorrow why you told that story, but your spirit does, and it knows what somebody else, you know, the person you're telling it to needs. Or if you're in a room, you know, your spirit knows what somebody needs in there and how you can offer that. And so that really impacted me and kind of empowered me to say what was on my mind, or to just speak without doubting myself or questioning myself, but to listen to my spirit. And that's really powerful. You know, I've gotten feedback from people about something that I shared and was vulnerable with and didn't know why I was telling people or why I was sharing it with that group, but it had helped somebody who had never had anybody that they could relate to along those lines of my experience or my story. And, you know, they empower us when we hear other people's stories, you know, and we can relate to them and hear their resilience and their survival and strength and the tools that they've used to get through that. And when we can give that empowerment to someone else, I mean, what better, what a great gift, you know. But our stories connect us that way, and they build a bond that is unique, you know, for each web of that bond that goes out. It's different for everybody that you connect with in a different way, and I just think that that's really beautiful. But on another level, when I was looking into storytelling as medicine, I had stumbled across some science that said our stories, our storytelling releases oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. And so when we tell stories to each other and share, we release that bonding hormone to each other. So no wonder we connect and we build, but it's the same hormone that mamas have when they're bonding with their new babies. And how powerful of a, you know, a drug is that, you know, to be able to release those good feelings within each other and connect. Thank you for this presentation and this information, and, you know, just sharing the good medicine about stories and empowering us to share them. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
I think that was beautiful, Carolyn. Thank you so much.
And sharing stories is intimate, you know, and yes, everything you said, it's that bonding, right? Like how many people do you come in contact with, and all of a sudden you start this conversation. A lot of time it's not just conversation, we are sharing stories in different ways.
Anybody else?
I do want to announce one more thing. I did see, I think had somebody had talked about change, and we've been talking, like there's been conversations in the chat about cleansing, and that it is, right? Like tears are cleansing. But we will have available in August a workshop that will help focus on healing from a really poor or damaging habits and how we can change that. And so that workshop will be available not only in person but also online. And so we'll talk about different ways to start putting those habits that we want into practice. But how can we do that, and how can we be successful at doing it, especially when we're focusing on ourselves if we don't have that support? And I know a lot of us have developed probably some really poor habits because of COVID. And so how can we come out of that? How can we switch that up? So if you would like to follow Indigenous Lotus, you'll see those upcoming workshops available to register for soon.
I think somebody else raised their hand and I'm looking through to see who it is. Or you could just come on and speak. Did someone else raise their hand?
I did.
Hi.
I chimed in a little bit late. I was we're in the process of moving our office space, and so at the end of the school year and moving from different locations, fitting into a smaller zone. But going through change. I've been going through change since I moved here in 2019, and I haven't been home since 2003 in Fairbanks, Alaska. So I never realized that that's traumatizing to me, or it's change. Change is traumatizing. So my mom, Shirley Holmberg, had to remind me that you're stressing, your body is stressing, that you need to do something for yourself, spiritually and healing and stuff. So luckily in 2019, the fall, there was still dancing available to go to, and the Fiddlers Festival was going on, so that was really healing. But then COVID hit, and dancing is my key. I love to go dancing. So what I'm trying to do is talk to my students about how to put those healthy habits into your life now, of grieving, because I work with students that are from junior high and high school, and it's I work under the juvenile justice grant that we have up here for our native school, basically, and trying to build their healthy habits before they become functioning adults, and putting that mindset in them so that they can go further. But even at 48, I'm still trying to do that. So it's challenging, but I know that music, native music, is really healing for us all. So I think that's what the kids really bond with too. So yeah, but that's what I want to do this fall.
Thank you for sharing that.
Would anybody else like to say anything or ask questions before we get off today? I'm curious, would anybody like to share how they felt after this exercise? Okay. Okay, so we don't have any other questions, comments? I just want to say, Victoria, I'm so glad that you've joined our team here. It's a privilege to get to know you, and that you have come to work with us. I totally believe in natural healing, and I think what you're doing is just very important. You're doing very important work, and I really appreciate all of your efforts. And you're very inspirational to other young ladies. So I just want to say thank you so much for the work that you're doing. So.
Thank you, Teresa. I really appreciate your words, and I appreciate being here as well.
All right, anybody else? So does anybody want to say anything? Leave us in a good way. Carlos gives you a heart. Thank you, Carlos. I think we would all say, did you want to say something, Carlos?
Yes, I kind of went off camera though. I just want to say thank you to Camate, Yuame, and De Mexica, Jose Quitao, and Carlos Lamadrid, in the Southern California area.
Carlos, speak up a little bit louder for us, please.
Sure.
There you go.
Let me get my volume up.
We can hear you now.
Thank you. So I just want to say thank you and gratitude. I actually made a phone call earlier and got to connect with them. And it's, got to hear some tears with her. Just hearing her voice. And I needed to release. It's my father's sister. And my father passed in January. And so,
Carlos,
you
you're
know,
going
just
in
that-
and out again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So it was just good to connect with my aunt and share some tears before this presentation and guided meditation allowed me to, like nurture the heart, nurture myself. I'm a provider out here. Work 2 jobs sometimes 3. And so, that burnout syndrome or compassion fatigue, whatever you want to call it, has been very real this year for me. And so it was just good. I got a lot of ideas. I'm going to go back to some of my prioritize, hopefully today or tomorrow, this week for sure. And I usually connect with the flute. I play the flute for others, but rarely for myself. So thank you for the presentation and thank you for allowing me to.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you so much, Carlos. So before I go, I would like to inspire or motivate any one of you still here, here with us, to think about what medicine is to you, and if you would like to email or write, and just let us know. And if you wouldn't mind us sharing that on our page, our Medicine Stories page and our Instagram, we would really love that. And even just to think about what works for you and just how important it is. And just having this conversation, I knew that there needed to be space for it, right? There needed to be space to speak about this, because this is how we learn and we connect with one another. And thinking about what is good for us and passing that on. But then not only being storytellers ourselves, but then that listening ear and listening to others' stories. Being an active listener and not a passive listener is really important. But I would like to encourage, inspire, motivate any one of you to write or think what medicine is to you and how and why it is. And so again, I want to thank you all for having me. This is a very new project. I was really thinking about what way do I take this? This is brand new, fresh off, and working with somebody who has just as much passion in this work that I do, and what are we doing with this and how is this going to look? And so I know as we continue to talk about this, post it, provide space for people to talk, we're going to reach more people, and therefore we're going to build a stronger, healthier, and healing community doing this work together in whichever capacity. So I want to say thank you all, and I hope you all have a really great, amazing day.
Thank you again, Victoria. Thanks everybody for joining us today. I hope you have a beautiful rest of Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. We had a short week, and just have a beautiful weekend and stay safe. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Julia, did you fill out we have a GIPRA form, guys. If anybody wants to fill that out, feel free. We would love to hear from you, but thank you so much.